I was looking for a hooker on Motel Drive in Fresno when I first met P-Dog, around June 28th, 2013. I pulled into the motel entrance because I thought he was pimping that lady he was with. So I pull in, windows down, stopping in the driveway to ask, "Hey man, you renting?" Shifting my eyes to the girl so he'd know what I was talking about. "Nah," was his response as he put his arms on the door and put his face into the car. He was hefty, cut, and stocky like a bulldog. "Hey, can we get a ride down the street just a few miles? It's hot and she lost her shoe." "Sure, get in," I said. He said his name was P-Dog and his girl was Amber and that he'd just gotten out of the pen. I knew by the tattoos and how he acted that he'd done time. I've dealt with felons my whole life. I'm the slow learner, a little bit stupid, so I let him befriend me. Maybe I enjoy the danger, but I know what it really is. I have moments of reckless abandon, otherwise known as bravery. Truthfully, it's because I had no friends. We pull into a motel near McDonald's over near Olive and 99, and I gave him $10 because he said he was a little short on cash. We hung out for 10 minutes and talked about where Amber's missing sandal went among other things. He said to come back tomorrow at noon, and I said cool. The next day came, and I was up early with nothing to do. I headed to Fresno and knocked on his door 3.5 hours earlier than expected and nobody answered the door. I was leaving to the stairwell along the second-floor balcony when I heard a car door close. I turned to look and saw a white four-door car with a mesh grill dividing the front seats from the back, like a cop car. P-Dog was walking around it and a middle-aged Hispanic man with graying hair wearing blue jeans and a collared shirt was getting out from the driver's side. I slunk back into the stairwell for cover and watched them walk into the front lobby. P-Dog was with a detective. I quickly left back home. I know what I saw. My new friend P-Dog was with a detective. So I went home. The next day, I was in Fresno and Olive getting fish food from a Chinese guy where I bought my son's 300-gallon tank a year before. On the way home, I remember having this urge to look over to my right, and I did, and there was P-Dog waving his arms with his girl Amber by his side. I'm uncertain as to why I turned to look. All I can say is I had the impulse to turn my head, and I impulsively braked and turned in to see what they were up to. I was living alone, had 0 friends, and just had my kids taken away 2 days prior to this incident by 2 dirty cops. Let me explain how my kids were removed from my custody. 2 dirty cops. It was around June 25th, 2013 and I had slept at my ex-wife's house in Madero from 5 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. I had just tried breaking my brother's car windows out, since he broke mine 6 months earlier. His windows would not break. I have broken windows out before. These were not like normal car windows. They would not break. I had a very good reason for doing this. Trust me. Afterwards, I was exhausted and stopped at my ex-wife's house and slept by the couch where my kids were sleeping. When I woke up, I had a video message from this guy that used to be my brother. He is no brother of mine. The video was taken from my driveway in my home, and he was calling me out to fight. I had thoroughly beaten the hell out of him for disrespecting my marriage on my 38th birthday party at our mom's house, and if I knew then what I know now, he would have gotten beat to death. But that was 4 years before I really knew his game. So I saw him in my driveway and I loaded up my son and daughter, 10 and 11, and headed home. On the way home, I impulsively called 911 because I didn't want any violence at my home, especially with kids around. My son later told me that he saw Matt talking with the hard hat road workers while I was dialing the phone, but I thought Matt was in my driveway, possibly with a crowd, so I asked for police to show up, just in case. Well, I got home and all was quiet. 10 minutes later these 2 cops roll up and come to my door. I let them in, thinking they were going to write a report about the threatening video that my brother sent me. Instead, they bombarded me with questions about, "Why are you sweating, Mr. Pope? Because it's 110 degrees out." What was that? The perpetrating cop was making me repeat myself on purpose. I calmly yelled out, "Because it's hot out." I can show you the video. My brother laughed. "Mr. Pope, how much marijuana have you smoked?" he said while rolling his eyes. "I mean eaten today. I just woke up an hour ago. I'm totally sober." I was being honest. "Excuse me?" He acted sincere, but it was all part of his game plan. "I haven't had any, sir." Making sure he heard me. "We're not sure this is the right environment for children." The other dirty cop was working their angle. "Look, my brother is an NSA agent and he is stalking me." I was desperate for help. The same dirty cop was quick to retort, "Oh yay, about that. I have the highest military clearance there is, Mr. Pope, and there are no NSA agents or operations in Kerman at this time." I didn't know whether to laugh or insult him back, and I just acted like he was serious and let it pass. The other perpetrating cop continued their verbal assaults and said, "I don't think you're in any shape to take care of kids, Mr. Pope, and I think my partner agrees. Do you have a family member that can take them for you? My ex is at work. I can call my mom and see." "Pardon me?" That sorry shitbag had his hand cupped his ear. By this time, I was getting pretty irritated, and I talked loudly from here on to keep him from doing his dirty deeds. Their mother is at work, but I can call my mom and see. Look, we're doing you a favor here. We don't want to get CPS involved because then it gets a little ugly. I was angry and confused, so I put my hand to my ear and said, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch all of that. If you can get someone to take the kids, then we can avoid calling CPS. If I was thinking clearly, I would have made them call CPS, because there was no reason for taking my kids from me. So I finally got my older brother Daniel to come get them. And there I was talking to these two dirty cops for 45 minutes while I waited for Daniel to get there. And for 2 weeks, I didn't see my kids. And when I finally visited the courthouse to learn that I still had custody, I picked them up from my mom's house to find that Matt was alone babysitting my son. I knocked on the door and my son opened it. Come on, son, I'm taking you home. Get your stuff. I went inside to get a soda. Who's here? I asked him. Just me and Uncle Matt, he said. I stormed out from the kitchen and looked my son in the eye. He is not your uncle and I don't ever want you being around him, and your grandma knows this. Now let's go. Matt enters from the back room and asks, Did you just threaten to kill me, Dave? I was at the door and turned around. What? I thought I just heard you threatening to kill me. Shut the fuck up, Matt, you goddamn pussy. I yelled as I shut the door and took Jason home. Amber was shopping with Grandma and would be dropped off later. And that's how I lost my kids for 2 weeks and then got them back. If they had been home, I wouldn't have brought P-Dog to my home. Things happen for a reason. Even creation happened for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. My twin. So there I was with a gangster from prison sent by a detective, and heading to my house. They showered when we arrived and P-Dog asked, Can I get the keys to get my clothes out of the trunk? He caught me off guard, because the next thing I know, he and his girl took off in my car. I dared not call the cops for fear of being attacked again. The police report mentioned mental illness, and I am afraid of police adding to that paper trail. P-Dog came back with new company about 8 hours later, like at 11 p.m., with some sketchy Negro and 2 pretty gangster girls. We kicked it for a few hours, smoking weed and losing track of my shit. I was caught slipping. I had 4 ounces of bomb weed in a briefcase and I left it laying around like a rookie. At 2 in the morning, P-Dog got me again and took off in my car with the hotter of the 2 Mexican chicks and an ounce of bomb weed. He was kind enough to leave me with 3 or 4 ounces. So I chilled with the company that he left behind, the sketchy Negro and the talkative Hispanic girl. He didn't say a word and she wouldn't shut up, and I was trying to make sense of what she was saying, talking about life. She got my attention when she said, Yay, we went and checked on your twin a few years ago. At that moment I knew who she was talking about, at least my instincts lit up in my mind. During her volunteering information about my twin, I flashed back to a professor at Fresno State that accused me of already taking his class the prior semester at UC Davis. I said, No, I've never been to UC Davis. He said, Yes, I just came from there, you were in my class. He was serious, and I increased my voice a little. I came from Merced JC, and this is my first semester at any university. He started walking towards me like he couldn't believe his eyes. I held my ground and he was 3 feet in front of me, and still he did not believe me. I shrugged my shoulders and put my hands in the air and convinced the physics professor that I wasn't the person he thought I was. He actually stopped halfway back to his podium, turned around and looked again before continuing with class. I have never had a professor stop a class lecture for any reason at all, so this was out of the ordinary and very memorable. And then 4 years later at National University, in 1996, there was Professor Plum. She looked very similar to my mom, was just as smart if not smarter, and had a son that looked just like me. I blurted out, he went to UC Davis and was a physics major. Professor Plum was just a little surprised. Yes, he did, and I saved her the trouble of the words by quickly explaining. I had a professor at Fresno State that thought I was him. It was weird. My mom was adopted and so was Professor Plum, and neither one knew who their natural parents were. My mom told me all she knew was they were very wealthy and she was born in Santa Monica. I began to think that my mom and Professor Plum were some type of genetic experiment, maybe from the military or some other agency that keeps it secret. Or, it could be that the professors were set up to provide substance of thought for a mind-control gang stalking program. Since this Parkway chick was telling me about him, I am certain he was just made up. Professor Plum was a fake, but it's not that important. Just strange that me and my twin were so alike, both physically and mentally, and both our moms were very similar and adopted, and seemed about the same age. And this Parkway Bulldog bitch was telling me with a certain confidence that she knew that I knew who she was talking about. She'd say things like, you know how everyone has a twin in this world? Well, we went and visited yours last year. He's doing fine. It's not him we're worried about. And that was the gist of the conversation. So who was this guy that these people were telling me about, and was he even real? And how the hell did the Parkway Bulldog bitch know the same person that professors let me know about 20 years earlier? Professor Plum and the physics professor were either part of a mind-control gang-stalking setup, or they were sisters, or both. It gets a little more complicated because the best love of my life, the most perfect girl for me ever, came just a week after my divorce from 10 years married in misery. Marianne had the same professor, Dr. Ruth, that I had during the same semester at Fresno State when the physics professor mistook me for my twin 20 years ago. Marianne was too perfect, and she came into my scene right after my absolute wreck of a marriage. I believe she was part of the gang stalking, or maybe was manipulated into place. She adamantly denied it when I accused her the last time we talked, and in that conversation she saw how I wasn't going to change my belief and she cut off all contact since that moment, and that was not like Marianne at all. Digging deeper, Marianne always had a problem with Mr. Royal, a teacher that was dismissed 1 year prior to my release, and 6 years ago in 2008, when I experienced my first ghost incident, Royal had described exactly similar incidents after I asked him his opinion of my experience. I asked him because he would tell ghost stories to his classes on a regular basis, so of course he would be a good person to ask about ghosts. Marianne always hated Mr. Royal, and 6 months after we broke up, she contacted me over FaceTime, and that very same day Mr. Royal had come by my house and talked to me about how I was doing. He had never come by my house before, ever. I know Marianne and Royal were planted accomplices in my gang stalking. I know in my gut. It's not important for the reader, but personally, this is very important. It is also very disturbing. Marianne's part in all of this is even more disturbing to me than realizing that my mom was either part of a genetic twin experiment or my 2 professors were part of the gang stalkers' elaborate story to help drive me crazy, or at least make me sound crazy to those people that hear my story. My stories are crazy, but they are true. The Sketchy Negro. So there I was listening to this crazy bitch talking about my twin and other things, while the sketchy Negro just sat across from us on the couch making weird facial expressions while she talked to me. I suspected he could talk, but he had not said a word, and he'd been here several hours, and I began to wonder what the hell was really going on. I don't know when it was, but it occurred in the dining room. Sketchy. That's what I'll call this black guy. He showed me a receipt for $10,000 that he had for some surveillance equipment, and I thought that was weird, for many reasons. For one, I had just gone through some unbelievable revelations concerning my brother, and the auditory sounds that had faded out over the last week were back again, but instead of it being my brother's harassing voice, it was crickets. Crickets were chirping in the garage, where I grew my marijuana, and from the bathroom, where I sometimes talked with my brother. And for a week these voices had faded. They die out every month or two and needed to be replaced. Our tax dollars are spent making surveillance of me and my house, and for them to harass me, I saw that $10,000 receipt for surveillance equipment, and I knew what was up. And so I pressed Sketchy when I saw it, asking, "Where's it at?" "In storage in Fresno," he said. So I told him I wanted to go get it, and we did as soon as P-Dog got back, like at midnight on whatever day it was, somewhere around the beginning of July 2013. He brought a different hoe this time, and I let him stay at my house while me and Sketchy gave that one crazy bulldog bitch a ride back to Fresno and then on to get the surveillance equipment. Once she was back in her halfway house, we were once again on the hooker scene around the Belmont Parkway Motel Drive area. Sketchy was driving because I have bad vision and get tunnel vision at night. He ran us around the hooker scene, while I patiently persisted with reminders for getting the surveillance equipment. I'm a very patient man, the most patient man I know, but it was just one too many rounds in the wrong part of town with the Negro driving the car. We got pulled over. Now, I have been pulled over literally dozens of times in my life, and not one of them has ever been like this. And my dumbass felt bad about being white afterwards, because since I had never been pulled over while having a colored fellow in the car, I assumed this was a typical cop behavior when they dealt with black criminals looking for hookers or drugs. I'm such a fucking retard. This was the plan from the start. I knew it when I heard the crickets chirping the night that he showed me the receipt. I knew he had installed 10 grand worth of surveillance into my house, but I went to Fresno with him to go get it from someplace somewhere only to get pulled over, harassed and stole from by a dirty black cop. He had orders from the NSA, and getting pulled over was their plan, and I should have realized this at the time, but I didn't. I felt bad for black people for how cops treat them. I'm the nice guy. The most righteous person I know is me. When the cop pulled us over, I had 3 or 4 ounces of weed in a turkey bag wrapped to my belt. I showed him my cannabis card, and he stole an ounce while I was sitting on the curb. I was just glad he didn't throw a sack of meth on my floorboard and bust me. I was more afraid of that than him shaking a gun in my face with his finger on the trigger, screaming for me to stop moving around, when I was only getting out my wallet. Anyways, after threatening to beat us and arrest us, they eventually let us go. Sketchy had no license and was black, and they let me take over and drive home. I should have beat the hell out of Sketchy, but like I said before, I'm the nice guy, very patient, and I understand each person has a role to play in this universe. Who am I to hold this against them? I hope to never hang out with gangsters again. Now where can I go to find a place not affected by the gang culture sold across America's society? I will move to Jerusalem in 2 weeks. I hope to make the last gang on Earth once I get there. Back to P-Dog. I got home and crashed until morning with car keys clenched in my hand. My first priority when I awoke was to get rid of these fools, so we headed to Fresno. After dumping off some of the perpetrators, it was just me and P-Dog knocking on room 213 of some motel, and I was hoping to get rid of him respectfully, and not in a cowardly way by jumping in my car and burning rubber, flipping the bird. So I went to see what was going on in room 213, just before he knocked. But after I had pissed in the stairway, P-Dog turned to me and whispered, "There was someone murdered in this room." I replied, "That's cool." So we went in and met some new friends, Manuel and Baby Dreamer. The room had a dresser with a TV on top along the wall to the right, and a large bed along the opposite wall, where Manuel and Baby Dreamer were laying. I sat in a chair near the door, and P-Dog settled in on the other side of the bed. Baby Dreamer scooted over to me shortly after we were introduced and said, "Hey Dave, check out this knife." She opened up the case and I set my eyes upon it. It had a 3-inch handle with a 2-inch blade, curved inward for deep cutting. As soon as I saw it, I remembered a dream that I had just a few weeks earlier, or maybe a few days, but for sure I had this dream before this moment, and all of the dream flashed before my eyes. I was making out with Baby Dreamer in the dream, and it was a full-color dream where everything was bright. We were standing in the same room, but we were located on the opposite side of the bed where she was showing me the knife. An arm wrapped around my neck from behind and pulled me back away from Baby Dreamer. Her face perfectly matched the one I saw in real life, every freckle in the way she expressed emotions. And as I faded backwards from her, she sincerely said with sadness, "They made me do it." And I looked back over my left shoulder, and I saw P-Dog's face as he rammed the knife into my chest and dug it in deep. I looked at the knife, the same knife that Baby Dreamer was showing me, the object that triggered the dream. Then blood filled my dream as it flowed from my chest. Then everything went black and I woke up. The dream was a real dream from my past, and I thought, at the moment, that it was God warning me in my dreams, like an alternate universe sacrificed itself in heaven so that this world could take a different path. It was either that, or they made the dream inside of my head for me. I'm still not certain which one it was. I have a good suspicion that our military can program dreams into our head. From the details in the dream, I am almost certain that this dream was put into my brain. Me and my son experienced the same dream from different locations on the same night around August 2013. I had the dream that Obama and 2 of his goons showed up in my room and talked to me. Obama warned me to stop talking about the things that I have figured out. I told him that I'm not going to stop, and they shot me. The next day, my son told me that he had a dream with Obama in it. I investigated by asking him 20 questions. It turns out that he saw a nice car pull around our block and park out front. My son was standing outside in the yard and saw 2 guys get out of the car and go into the house. He said Obama stayed in the car, and these 2 guys ran back into my room and he heard gunshots. I think they can program our dreams if they so desire, and they had Obama visiting me with my son's dream to verify the message. But I don't give a fuck. I'm expecting aliens to come kill me once my shit goes viral, but who knows? I'm willing to die trying to get justice for me and other victims, and they can come kill me for all I give a fuck. I'm not afraid to die. Fuck our perpetrating national security agency. It is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and we are the sheep. Getting back to P-Dog, I became concerned because he killed me in a dream before I ever met him, and every detail about him was spot on in the dream. I took P-Dog and a new girl that had shown up back to my pad. What I found out when I got there was enough to piss me off. My son's Xbox was gone. Now, I'm the nice guy, but every man has his breaking point where he gets angry when being wronged. I called P-Dog out and I was mad, ready to fight. I yelled out from the middle of the street at 2 in the morning while P-Dog took a seat and watched the show. "Fuck that shit, we're gonna throw them down, bitch. I let you get away with all the other stuff, but my son's Xbox is the last straw." I was dancing in the street mad as fuck, trying to get him to fight. "Come on, you fucking nigger, I'll beat the fuck out of you." On a side note, I'm not racist, but I use that word more than I should. And the reason? I am and always have been a drug addict. Society has given the green light to call a black guy a crackhead and lock them away as a slave for 8 cents an hour labor, but don't you dare say the word nigger. Society has been mind-controlled by an enslaving murder machine that undermines our lives. They've slowly transformed America's racist emotions into hating druggies, and we do hate druggies, and I know the discrimination that colored folk have gone through firsthand, because I am a drug addict born and raised in a sick society. I think this is more offensive than some N-word that someone says, for Christ's fucking sake. The world is a circus of haters put out there by national security to clown around with their enemies in society. I know what's going on and we'll discuss this later. Anyways, P-Dog didn't bite, but the gig was up. I carried the knife all night and dropped them off when daylight hit. Baby Dreamer called me the next day and I really wanted to go hang out with her, but it was all just a bit too much, and I had to turn her down for fear of losing my life. I could easily have fallen for her, but the dream was overkill, and I had to think about my kids. So I turned her down. I never saw her again. P-Dog, however, came by a few days later to say goodbye and to ask for some weed. He was a cool murderer in my opinion, and I could tell he was sad. The original detective guy brought him over, and I gave P-Dog a few joints and he smoked one while we played foosball. I didn't ask nor talk about it, but I knew P-Dog's task was over and done with, and he was on his way back to the prison they took him out of. This was 8 months ago, and I just know he is finishing his sentence and enjoyed a few perks for helping out with national security. He really did.